Good evening, folks. Looking to resume our Colwood Council meeting, regular meeting of Council for Monday, January the 22nd, 7 p.m. Wanting to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people as we undertake our meeting for this evening. Council looking for approval of the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Public participation time. This is an opportunity for those in the audience who may have a few words to say, and we're going to welcome Ms. Cullington.
Judith Cullington, 3338 Acemink, and they are a very few words. I just, item 8.2.1 on the park and ride, I just noticed that in the earlier report there was mention of potentially need for an easement agreement with BC Hydro regarding the fast charger at the park and ride site. I didn't see that in the recommendation, and I just wanted to sort of say, perhaps when you get to discussing that item, we can verify that, yes, we're going to keep the fast charger as a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members?
Good evening, Rick Marchand. If you don't mind, I'm going to wear my jacket. It's a little cool in here this evening.
Yeah, apologies for that. We're not sure why it's so cold in here either.
I have 3 points I'd like to raise tonight on the agenda, starting first with the presentation that we're going to hear from BC Transit. Just a point that the slides that I got were somewhat a little difficult to read, especially the fine print with these old eyes. But if the presenters and or council can just keep in mind that I'm really interested in knowing not only what the planning dates are in terms of what they have foreseen for the Colwood corridor, but also the contracting implementation dates if funding and everything else goes along as planned. I think that's very informative in knowing when we can see some sort of progress in dealing with the congestion in our part of the world. The second item I'd like to address is the 8.1. The draft letter that's being proposed for the CRD transportation service. I believe that was 8.1. Let me just check my planning here. Yes, it was the draft letters. I fully support the content of that draft letter. I don't think as a taxpayer we need any more bureaucracy or any higher taxes to deal with something that is going to try and be managed by people who are not basically subject matter experts in the area of transportation. So you've got my full support on that one. I thought I'd just verbally make that tonight. And last but not least, probably the most contentious one to deal with is in Section 5 of the agenda, which deals with an email that was sent out by Mr. Dave Saunders. I understand that the city staff made a presentation and had a meeting with the developers as a group. As you probably know, I've been involved with the OCP steering group for quite some time now. So we've all seen the evolution of this document over the last 18 months in terms of all the interactions with the citizens, interactions with people and developers at the OCP steering committee. And then I saw this email and it caused me to reflect on some statements that are in here that I don't want to bring to your attention so that when you have your discussion on this item, you can either agree or disagree with me. Whether you perceived it as a rushed effort or not, I think it was a courtesy that the city staff took the time to pull together the assembled group of 30 or 40 developers to have a look at this large document. That notwithstanding, from my perspective, if you're interested in the OCP, you should have been tracking it from the very beginning. This shouldn't have come as a surprise to anybody. That notwithstanding, some people may view it as rushed, so I'm not going to really debate that part of it. The two parts of the memo or this email that caused me the greatest concern is the calling out in the third last paragraph of the adaptive development planning, the serious review that they want to undertake of this section of the OCP, when I think it was made abundantly clear by the majority of citizens in attendance that they want to see something like this as part of our plan. And lastly, the thing that concerns me the most is the intent to start setting up meetings with mayor and council and city staff. The whole genesis behind the development of the OCP, as you rightly know, was openness and transparency. at this late date to have special interest groups meeting with council and staff behind closed doors while we still have to work through the OCP steering committee, I don't believe is kosher and is not in keeping with the principles that you laid out as to how you want to undertake this plan development. And with that, I'll close my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. John Vincer, 3340 Painter Road. So I would also like to direct my comments towards agenda item number 5. My comment is that as an original member of the OCP steering committee, I don't believe that any special interest group should be given any more attention or consideration than any other person or group. Having attended the well-advertised OCP meetings and info sessions for more than a year now, I know these meetings were open to all willing participants and no one was excluded. There was ample opportunity for anyone or any group to let their feelings be known in the development of the OCP so far. The proposed OCP timelines for input have been public for over a year. I have all the meeting notes. In fact, the timelines were extended, giving participants more time for input. There were many avenues for input, such as the Making Wave engagement events, online surveys, etc. There's many more. So what we have so far in the document is, this OCP document is the desires and wills of over 1,300 Colwood stakeholders through their direct interactions and input. I ask that Council consider this in making their response. Thank you.
Timely sequence of presentations. Your Worship, Council, my name is Mark Holland. I'm here just to speak to the same topic that these fine gentlemen have spoken to around the official community plan. My background is a city planner and most recently working in the real estate development industry. My team had the great privilege in 2008 of being the team that led your last OCP process. I've recently been asked by some of the development community to come in and help coordinate the disparate discussion of all the different discussions of different kinds of projects that the developers have to help try and coordinate that discussion effectively for your staff so they're not basically dealing with cacophony of many different voices. I just have a few thoughts that I'd like to put forward. I completely agree with the two fine gentlemen who just spoke and a lot of the community agenda that the OCP process needs to be very transparent and very open, and that it is the community that builds the vision for its city. This is Colwood. It is by its residents for how its future is to unfold. That's their right. The implementation of that plan, however, falls on the shoulders and the responsibility and the financial risk of just a few people who primarily build the businesses and homes. And that's the discussion here. They're not a group of vampires with horns in their head. They're hardworking, struggling people, and the development of even a single home is incredibly complex. It requires a very, very large number of people with a lot of post-secondary education. Just to become a carpenter takes 4 years. When we add in accountants and lawyers and landscape architects and about 10 different kinds of engineers and all of the financiers and all lawyers and everything involved, it's a very complex process. And the implementation is really where I think the conversation here that we're looking at is what this group is asking for a bit more time. I would say that by and large from the work that I've just started working with them, that there's almost no quibble with the larger vision for Colwood. I think there's a great shared sense of appreciation for where Colwood is. It's interesting to look back at the last 2008 OCP when Langford and Colwood did them together. 10 years ago, the West Shore was a very different place than it is today. There was very much a greater sense of shared vision and coordination around what could be. I think 10 years later, we've seen two different visions begin to emerge. Langford has taken one path, and Colwood is not taking that same path, and I think there's a clear understanding that that's the case. I think the discussion here that is emerging around the time, there have been developers involved in just about every single meeting over that entire time, including many that I've met with, and I think they appreciate that process. The time that we're asking for sufficient time to work with your staff. We have a really good working relationship with them. I spent 3 hours today with some of your staff talking through how to go about working through this line by line. We just need enough time to be able to do that. If you think about the last 10 years of what Colwood has been through, when we started in 2008, 2006, 2007 on the work, We had just completed 15 years of unprecedented economic prosperity in Canada. There was no end of it in sight. I don't need to remind you what happened in 2009. Colwood survived in the following years the single largest financial meltdown probably of our lifetimes. And in short order, it has rebounded, and we are now facing one of the most unprecedented rises in housing costs that we've ever seen in the country. To a point now, I don't need, you all got your assessments. Imagine going to the lottery and buying a ticket and rubbing that thing off and getting that assessment back. You just won $100,000. That's great for all of us who own homes. It's really, really challenging for people who don't have a home yet or for disadvantaged low-income seniors. And we need to work together to figure out how to grapple with that in the next 10 years. Because 10 years from now, we'll look back, and this place could be entirely unaffordable if we don't work together. And I think that the community of developers who've stepped forward now, they're being very proactive. They put money on the table. They're paying for my time to come and help coordinate and go work with all of them on the different locations, to come up with some suggestions to work with your staff, yourselves, and be transparent with the community. We were there with the OCP committee last week, to bring forward ideas on the how. I think the conversation is not about the what. The community has established the vision and the what. Our discussion is to figure out the how so that there's not unintended consequences in the design and the DP guidelines around how this works. This will include addressing the environmental concerns. I think the EDPA has certainly triggered it, not for all developers, but for some. Some of them will be quite heavily hit by this. And so we're working forward with that, and I'm pleased to say that even today we came up with a bunch of interesting new refinements around how we can adapt what is there to explore with you on council and your consultants, how to refine this so that there are few tripwires, there are many fewer fights that may be occurred, and we in fact can build a greater urban ecosystem than just protecting existing trees and hoping they survive. So I thank you for the time to speak to you. I had a longer presentation. The mayor politely came and said, nope, that's a full presentation. This is public participation. So I'm very much looking forward to working with you, with them, with your staff, and with the community in this next chapter. This plan is the playbook for an entire industry for your future homes and businesses for the next 10 years, and given how much of the last OCP we moved forward to this one, maybe for the next 20. And so I think that gives us, it's appropriate for us to take the time to make sure this is right in what we see that's coming. I know you have a first draft coming to you very quickly. Your staff have informed me that your second draft that will be coming to you for first reading is in final draft. I've talked with many of your consultants. Some of them used to work for me. So I expect that will come in very, very soon. And all we do is ask for the appropriate time. We'll be as transparent and open as possible so that we can work through and eliminate any unintended consequences that we can find in the process so that this moves forward smoothly. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to future conversations with you.
Thanks, Mark.
Mayor, Council, audience, Dave Saunders, 813 Pears Road. So just to address a couple comments from the audience, this was by no means an indication that we wanted this to be secret, private. We want it to be transparent. There is laws and governance with respect to how we meet with council. If we meet with over 3, then that's a quorum. We can't do that. It's no different than in past procedures where we meet individually with members of committee or council. The November luncheon that invited just some of the development community, some businesses, and some professionals. That's what it was. It was a luncheon to preview the new draft document. And then we were told to respond within a week. And I addressed you guys here a little while ago on that, and we asked that a liaison committee be set up. And we didn't really hear back too much on that. So what I'm here to say is that there is sincere concern from not only developers, but business professionals and citizens in relation to the draft document. Our Colwood Community Stakeholders Association is made up of all those people. There's well over 50 right now. We want it to be open and transparent. Anybody is welcome to attend the meetings. We don't advertise them. It's word of mouth. So people can contact me, and you're happy to attend our next meeting. We have concerns in the draft document of unintended consequences. We know that staff have done an incredible job to push it to where it is right now. We know that council has. We know that committee has. But honestly, guys, you won't get a business person, you won't get a developer out to the public forums to bring forward real concerns that may be a little touchy. But I can tell you, in this draft document, for the affordable housing component in the city of Colwood, we really need to challenge ourselves, because right now, I did some numbers, excuse me. So what I thought is affordable when I first started, or what I think is affordable for my 3 daughters, isn't what families are buying right now. And it's beyond me what they're buying, but they are. So it starts with townhomes for a family of 400,000, going up to single family of 650,000, going up to 800,000. The measure of that income demographically starts at around 50, 75, 125 up to 135,000. The unintended consequences in this draft document push the affordability limit to all those individuals that they won't qualify anymore. So we want to work cooperatively with the city. And what we did coming from our meeting that we had was we said, we'll take 6 members that are very well respected in our community so we can work with the city to bring forward a whole bunch of concerns so we aren't wasting your time or citizens' time. And in that process, we said, maybe we're wrong. And if we're wrong, then we'll hire a third party, one of the best in BC, to review the document and bring forward some concerns from our side and help city staff as well. A second look. We've stepped up. We're paying for that consultant. The city can use that consultant. We've, as Ian, the planner, knows, we've given this person no direction. So maybe the interest that he brings forward isn't in our best interest, but it will help the city. So our intent is to be fully public, fully transparent, and we're here to help, we're here to cooperate, but there is some things in here that are a concern to all. So we thank you for your time that you've given us, Mrs. Mayor, some council members that have expressed some interest in seeing us, and thank you to staff and committee members for the work that you've done so far. Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Go for a second. And, oh, he's just reaching for a pen. Thought he was coming back. With that, we'll move on in our agenda, folks. Thank you very much for all of your comments this evening. Mayor's message, a few things. Maybe I'll start with council. Nothing from this end today? I know I've got tree bylaw folks down here. So.
Thank you. First off, the Urban Forest Task Force. We've had 2 meetings. The first meeting was mainly procedural. Staff provided an overview of the bylaw, the reasons for its existence, and the process followed to adopt it. Staff reviewed the terms of reference for the task force, and the task force discussed schedules and meeting dates. Finally, a chair, Rick Jeffrey, and a co-chair, Judith Cullingdon, were appointed. The second meeting happened just last week, January 17th. We had a discussion of the approach and work plan, a discussion of the interim bylaw, both by committee and members of the public that were in attendance. The bylaw was generally thought to be too restrictive, too complex, and too expensive for Colwood homeowners by both the task force members, the public attending, and the general comments the task force had heard to date. There were questions about exactly what the intended goals of the bylaw were and how to make the bylaw accomplish those goals. The task force will now bring forward a framework for the new bylaw to the next scheduled meeting for Thursday, February 1st. The other meeting I was involved in was the OCP steering committee meeting, as you've already heard from a couple of the members. Staff presented an overview of the input to date, including the public meetings, the staff workshop, the developer workshop, and the input from the Christmas light-up event. There was a very large turnout of developers at this meeting, something we had been short of at previous meetings. There was lively discussion on the key inputs from the public, with the developers group providing a different perspective on those topics. We hope to bring a second draft of the bylaw to council very soon, hopefully for first or second reading. So after which we will have an updated version and thorough discussion before we have a final version ready for adoption. Finally, I will have to say I agree with my committee members that have spoken. The developers group is proposing to have meetings with Colwood staff to discuss the bylaw. I have to say I am completely opposed to closed doors meetings on this bylaw. To date, we've had very open and frank meetings with anyone who cared to attend, including a few from the development community. I'm afraid, excuse me, I am afraid that closed doors meetings at this point will send the message to the public that the developers have a right to propose changes without public input or knowledge. I would welcome the developers to make their presentations either to the steering committee, or we could call a special committee of the whole council meeting for council and staff to be there to hear those presentations. But I will not support any in-private meetings. We had a mayor a number of years ago that did this kind of thing in private, and we wound up with the Colwood sewer system, which then wound up the city in law courts for about 15 years. So in camera is a place for things that are supposed to be in camera. The OCP is not. And that's all I have to say for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members with anything?
Thanks. Just thought I'd take a moment to update everyone on council and in the community. We heard last week from the member of the public who talked about the Rickhanson accessibility audits that are available. And at the Intermunicipal Advisory Committee on Disability Issues last week, we had a very good discussion, and one of our newest members of the committee has performed a number of the audits in the West Shore, including all of our library branches have had those audits done. There are a number of issues still to be solved. I mean, the audit doesn't solve problems, it only identifies them. So there's lots of follow-up work to be done. We also had a pretty lively discussion with regards to accessible transit improvements, and recognize that our top priority for last year was to be the upgraded transit stop at the washrooms on Lagoon Boulevard, and that has been slowed down with the permitting process from Archaeology Branch. So it is coming, but it is taking longer. So just a quick couple of points from the Disabilities Committee.
Terrific, thank you. And just for matter of public interest, West Shore Chamber of Commerce is holding their annual Visions West Shore, February 1st, 5 p.m. Please see their website for ticket information if anyone's interested. They will be having the, I think it's Langford, Colwood, View Royal, Machosen, and Highlands mayors in to do a oversight of their communities that evening. So tickets and information is available onto the website, and check them out if you're interested in participating. From that, if there's nothing else, looking for one set of minutes for adoption.
So moved. Second.
Back up for a half second, though, because Councillor Day has a bit of an amendment for me. Thank you.
There is an amendment to the minutes under item 10 on page number 12 for the release of in-camera resolutions. The in-camera resolutions were accidentally left off the minutes that were included with the agenda. So the following resolutions were released from their in-camera classification, including an amendment to the Chief Administrative Officer's employment agreement for the cost of cell phone, the appointment of our business license inspector, our planning technician has been given that role. Also, the appointment and remuneration for the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officers was released from its in-camera designation, and we have again secured Mr. Tom Moore and Mrs. Pat Crozier to assist with the elections, which is good news for Colwood. And we have also directed staff to engage Innova Strategy Group to undertake a review of public works with an estimated cost of $7,560.
Thank you. So with that amendment? Seconder? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. One set of minutes for receipt, please. Committee of the Whole, December the 11th.
Move receipt.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We do have a presentation this evening for us all. BC Transit is here. James Wadsworth and two of his colleagues.
Yes, Lindsay Taylor and Adriana McMullen are planners who work for BC.
You can, James, if you need to, you can pull that thing right up and out of that if you...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's actually better if you don't get too close into it.
So about there?
Speak, let them put their hands up.
Here I am.
Can you sing?
Okay. Okay, good. Just before we get going, Councillor Day, we did receive the shelter request that you forwarded to us, and we'll look at that with Colwood staff as part of the BC Shelter program for next year. So tonight we're here to talk about the Island Highway Transit Priority and Park and Ride study that we're doing with Colwood staff and Viewerall staff. The outline of the presentation tonight is just to talk a bit about the challenges, a bit about the long-range plan for transit, the Transit Future Plan, how this planning process works, next steps, and a couple of examples of other similar type projects. I think you're all aware of the transportation issues of people being stuck in traffic, and so we're just trying to find ways to improve transportation choice and get the bus out of the traffic congestion, and also carry all the people that are looking to get home or to work or to school. Right now, we carry about 9,500 people a day on the routes that come from the West Shore that come into downtown Victoria. So there's a lot of people that use the transit service, and I think improvements would make it work a lot better and even carry more riders. On the Island Highway, there's about 2,700 to 3,400 people a day that are moving along the corridor, whether they're in a car, in a bus, on a bike, and about 20% of those are on the bus. In the region, we have a Transit Future Plan, which was endorsed by the Transit Commission and local governments all across the region back in 2010. It's the long-range vision for transit. At about the same time, we looked at rapid transit from the West Shore to downtown Victoria, and that gave us a long-term vision of where we'd like rapid transit to be and the technology. The long-term plan is to look at LRT, and out of that plan we identified a corridor. But over the last few years we've been working on shorter-term plans to look at things such as bus lanes to help us move forward with developing the market for future rapid transit. And so we've done corridor studies with the City of Victoria, worked with the ministry on parts of the highway in Saanich, and we've developed preliminary plans that allow us to identify a concept and budget and move forward to implementation. So in Victoria, we have bus lanes in both directions from downtown Victoria out to Mayfair Mall. And actually tomorrow, we're going to have a groundbreaking ceremony for starting the last phase of the bus lanes in the City of Victoria. So that's good news. The ministry has agreed to do a bus lane from Mayfair Mall all the way out to just past the Tillicum intersection. They're in the process of tendering that project right now. So we're hoping to hear soon about a construction date, but our understanding is that's supposed to be done this year in 2018. And as part of the interchange project at Mackenzie, those will include bus on shoulder lanes. So we're slowly getting all the pieces coming together. And moving forward out here, we're looking next at the Island Highway for what are the forms of transit priority, be it transit signal priority, queue jumper lanes, or bus lanes that make sense for this part of the community, and also looking at options for park and ride. So the whole goal of the plan is to make it easier for people to get out of the cars, improve transit travel times, because we know if we make transit more competitive with the car, just like in Ottawa, and other places where they've built bus rapid transit, people will get out and quickly they'll see 30% increases in transit ridership. The objectives of the study, again, are to look at transit priority measures, improve transit travel times, and the efficiency of operations. Because not only if we make the bus go get through the congestion faster, we can do more bus trips, which is a good thing, gets more people more options. And we're also looking at park and ride locations and making it all work within the local government plans, transportation plans, and official community plans. The study area that we're looking at for this part is to look from Colwood Corners at Goldstream all the way down to on the Island Highway to Highway 1. We're also looking at park and ride options to replace the capacity here and improve the capacity. We have a couple options right now that I really can't be precise about that we've identified with the Ministry of Transportation further out on Highway 14. And tomorrow we're going to Langford to look at a couple of options for park and rides there. And we haven't gone there yet, but as part of the study, we're going to see if there's options in Colwood that also have some potential, and then look at which ones are the best ones to move forward with the project here. In terms of process, we've had technical meetings with local government staff. We've identified all the data that we've needed for the project. We're in the process of developing some options that we'll come back to work with local staff on. And then we're hoping to have a draft plan in March and finalize it in June. And so this is a preliminary plan that gives us a concept that we can agree on and understanding what the costs are, because what we did in the city, we followed the same process with the City of Victoria, came up with costs and a concept. We went to council and got them to endorse the concepts, and then we went back to the Transit Commission and developed a budget to move forward with an implementation plan. So we have right here an idea of when we think we're going to be done the preliminary plan, but then moving forward past that, if we have a project that we all agree we want to implement, we don't have dates and timelines for that. But as soon as we have an understanding of what we're building, then we can start to look at if it's something we want to move forward with. So the next steps, again, are reviewing preliminary concepts and evaluating them and coming back to council with a draft report to see if it's something that you'd like us to move forward with. These are just a couple of examples of other projects that do have some similarities. This is in King County. They have a Metro Rapid Ride on Pacific Highway, which is Highway 99. It doesn't look exactly like the corridor in Colwood, but this is what they've implemented: new sidewalks, bus lanes, transit signal priority. It was a great improvement over what they had. In Kelowna, we've done rapid bus with the City of Kelowna and West Kelowna, and we have bus HOV lanes that go from West Kelowna all the way through downtown Kelowna and then on to their university. They have newer bus shelter investments, transit signal priority, the bus lanes, and they have real-time information at the bus stops. So these are all things that we'd like to do here too. So those are, that was just a quick presentation. Now, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Thank you. You had a couple of questions. I know, Rick, you're somewhere in the realm.
Yep. I think with the City of Victoria, I think from developing, coming up with a preliminary plan and going through that process and implementing what we did there, it probably was an 18-month process. I don't want to say it's going to be the same here, but it could take about that long. I hope not.
Any comments from council? Questions? Councillor Day?
Thank you. Your plan mentions park and rides, and I'm just curious if you have any direction as to where that's where the optimum location has been identified?
I think the optimal location would be where there's frequent transit services that people are realistically willing to drive to. So ideally, they would be located within close proximity to Goldstream or the Island Highway. We know there's a couple options further out the Island Highway in Langford that might make sense, but we're going to work with city staff to see if there's anything within Colwood that could potentially make sense as a replacement.
And just to follow up on that, I had the comment earlier was made that they're hard to read, your slides. They're a little bit blurry. Even on my iPad, if I try to make it bigger so that I could see the small font, I can't quite make it out. So I know it has good information on it, but I couldn't get the information from your slides. So you need to do something with your printing there somehow. Just a little feedback for being involved. And the last question that I have is just in regards to how does the public get involved to say, we would like this or we would like that in the plan that you're putting forward?
Through the transit future planning process and processes that we've done in the past, we've gotten an understanding that solving this problem is something that the public would want. In the case of the Victoria one that we did, once we had a preliminary concept that we agreed was a reasonable concept that we could move forward with, then we went out and did a few different types of engagement. We had public engagement with open houses, but we also went and walked door to door to talk to the businesses about their access. So I would imagine we would follow a similar process with the City of Colwood.
Okay, so and are you getting that input from your major centers like the hospitals, the large schools?
The input that we've had to date has been through the Transit Future engagement process, and so that included open houses, taking out our Transit Future bus, which is the open house bus, and bringing it out to different sites in the community to do engagement. I think in that process we talked to on a regional scale, we talked to probably about 5,000 people through the process. We did that stuff, and we did online engagement too.
That was a couple of years ago now that you
Correct.
did that. Yeah, I did participate in the Transit Futures planning, so I appreciate that. But I think the public would like to still be engaged and not just have that one narrow window of opening. So I just think that since you already have these slides, if they were a little more legible so that people could actually, get the information. I mean, it looks a little clearer on the TV there than it does on my iPad, but I'd love to share that with our residents so that they could be part of the process.
You're right. What we can do is we do have a project page. We'll get that updated and we can share it.
Awesome. Thank you.
James, I can show you what tomorrow at the meeting or at our transit meeting. I can show you how that slide, it just blurs. You cannot read any of the white.
It looks crisp up here.
It looks perfectly crisp on there, but even in its natural form, I couldn't possibly read it. And when I try and pull it to screen size, it just, the letters just open up and you can't read any definition to it at all.
We'll try and fix that.
So it might be a better way to shift the information. We'd be happy to put it up on our website too.
Okay, we'll do that.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I guess just one of the things that I would encourage BC Transit is to also engage West Shore Park and Rec. One of the things is down by the Q Center, we have hundreds of parking spots that are just completely unutilized during the day. I mean, they get utilized at nighttime, obviously, when there's events happening at the Q Center. The problem is that it's too steep a hill that people won't actually utilize it and park down there and then walk up to the park and ride. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just hoping that BC Transit has that on their radar and would be at least in discussions with West Shore Park and Rec to see if there's some way that, because I would hate for land use for us to take something out of our municipality and just have another parking lot if we have lots of parking spots already within the community, especially if you talk about the Goldstream and Souk Road corridor.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Nault?
Just a quick question while we're talking about transit future. One of the biggest complaints I get from people that use transit is it stops running far too early in the evening. So if you want to go downtown and do dinner and a movie and maybe a drink afterwards, it's either drive or take a cab because the buses stop running out here at a very early hour. Is there any intent, as with other cities, to extend bus services to 24 hours?
24 hours. Right now we're at the last buses are coming back on Friday and Saturday night, but around 2 a.m. We did, I think a year or two ago, we did add some late night service to the Route 50, which is the West Shore route that goes down Island Highway and Goldstream. Maybe not as far into the Metchosin and onto Metchosin and Wishart roads, but no, we don't have it. One of the challenges too is if we run our buses really late and work them really hard, they're not available for that peak morning service. So as we expand our facility in the future and have additional buses, it might be possible to run more late night service.
Thank you. No other questions? Thanks very much, James.
Thank you.
Appreciate your coming out. Moving on then to correspondence 5.1, we have the email that was provided in regards to a request for meetings with the Development Committee. Council? Councillor Nault?
I would be happy to propose that council have a special committee of the whole meeting to meet with the developers and or their representatives, make it a public meeting so it's all above board, and members of the steering committee can feel free to attend and comment as well. So I will leave it to the mayor to try to arrange a date for that if council is in agreement.
Second part to that, of course, is a seconder.
But I would particularly like to hear from staff because we made a plan, we engaged our community, and I know that we are nearing the end of that planning process, and it's a lot for staff to manage that. I'd like to hear from staff.
And I'm looking over there. I know we're very time challenged because there's a lot of things going on over the next little while.
Yeah, right now we're targeting to get the basically a second draft to council as soon as possible. So that would be the February 13th council meeting. We're also hoping to have as much time as possible for that meeting for the community to digest the second draft. So as soon as we can, we're looking at potentially the very first week of February to release that draft. So that's the timing that we're looking at for the process. Whether council could hold a committee of the whole meeting before or shortly thereafter would be a question for council and staff to organize relative to the schedule, and I wouldn't comment on that right now.
Councillor Nault.
I think it would be very appropriate for it to be held as soon as possible after council has adopted the second draft, simply because right now I don't think staff has any way of knowing that council has actually bought into the OCP. We haven't officially accepted it, so a second reading would probably go a long way to do that, and that would then open it to public and eventually public hearings.
It's our opportunity to do review of the draft for sure. Council, anybody else? Then call the question. All those in favor of arranging a committee of the whole in the future, probably after the draft first reading? In favor? Opposed? None? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, memo from Director of Corporate Services, appointment to replace myself on the Colwood Central Local Area Service Parcel tax roll. Folks, when it was slated for the 31st of January, I was free and clear, but with the scheduling of the West Shore Chamber of Commerce Visions West Shore event, I've been precluded to that, so I'm looking for a replacement to sit alongside Councillor Trace and Logan for that parcel tax. Do I have any volunteers or voluntolds?
May I just get a clarification? I can't do the 2nd. I'm away on the 2nd. Is this just the 31st and 1st? Because I have it down as the 1st and 2nd.
No, it's the 1st. And
1st and 2nd, possibly? So I can't do it if it's...
I think at 4 o'clock this afternoon, there was only one set of parcels to go through that it was finance's estimation, and maybe Chris, I think she was estimating about an hour or hour and a half on the 1st, but I can't.
Well, we did receive essentially an appeal from one complainant that encompasses a number of parcels. Unfortunately, it's very hard to predict how long that could be. However, on the 1st, we have the council chambers booked, so we could just go until we need to go on the 1st. The 2nd was set aside more in case we needed to continue on the 2nd. Yeah.
Councillor Day?
I think, in fairness, I live fairly close, and it'd be possible for me to be here. I know, Rob, you were saying you're traveling, so I always hate to have too many things on my plate before I'm trying to head out of town myself. So I'd be willing to step in if that would be helpful.
That's okay. So Councillor Day, if that's acceptable to council, to replace me on the 1st. Thank you. And while we're talking on February the 1st, I understand I missed that in the mayor's message, Jason.
I have discovered a previous engagement on February 1st for the Community Urban Forest Task Force. I would ask if council could appoint a different councillor to be the liaison for that one meeting.
I'm sorry, for which meeting?
It's for the
Urban Forest Task Force.
Yeah, it's just a one night.
One evening, 7 p.m., February 1st.
Is there somebody that might be able to consider that one? 7 o'clock on the 1st. What's that? And it would be, the task force is scheduled from 5 till 8, and the tree task force would be 7 p.m. set. So, Councillor Chong, did we hear from you that that'd be okay? Perfect. So if we can slot her in for the folks that need to know. Thank you so much. Moving on then to, do we have to vote on that to replace me?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. We do need to vote on that. You have to appoint somebody to serve on the panel.
Thought. So backing up that, please, recommendation, please, for Councillor Day to replace.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving. Jason, do we need that for the liaison as well? Usually that's just an over.
So I would move that Councillor Chong be the alternate for Councillor Nault on Thursday, February 1st at the Urban Forest Task Force.
Thank you. Seconder? Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. You can't vote for yourself.
She thought it was a great idea.
Item, please, 8.1, planning and land use.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've got a bit of a housekeeping item tonight. The staff report before you outlines a staff recommendation to add a $2,500 per unit amenity contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund to the terms of the development agreement associated with the Pacific Landing development. This would have the effect of correcting an omission in the Comprehensive Development Zone 15. The change is supported by the owners of Pacific Landing and would result in the amenity contributions to equal what was agreed to when the CD15 zone was amended in 2015. With that, I end my introduction. Thank you.
Questions of staff? Anybody?
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Second.
Good. Any questions at this point? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item under Finance and Administration, 8.1.1, discussion regarding, oh yeah, that's the letter. Y'all want to lead in, or do you want me to just do this all by myself?
He was ducking.
Yeah. Sorry, Your Worship. Boy, where do I begin? The CRD is looking for feedback in relation to establishing the transportation service, a regional transportation service. We have provided written response to them in two previous circumstances where council had expressed opposition to the creation of that service. And sorry, is that better? And so this third round came about through a proposal to consider, or the board to consider using an alternate approval process, which at the best of times is problematic for most elected officials because it is a negative process in which you ask for people to oppose something as opposed to vote for. Along with that, we still have not been able to identify any real clear direction on what that transportation service is going to entail. We also have not it's not been clarified that it is actually, in fact, tax neutral. It is proposed a $2.5 million tax lift that they propose not to draw upon because they're using existing taxes from other services, but those other services have not, there's been no proposal to repeal the bylaws that establish those services. So from a legal perspective, it's not a tax neutral proposal, it's a $2.5 million tax increase proposal. In consultation with yourself, we propose this response to the board to address these concerns.
Thank you. To further what our CAO has said, I sit at the CRD table, and this evolution of the Transportation Service Authority or Transportation Authority, they have no jurisdiction over roads. That's a legislated mandate from the province, not policing, not roads. So to think that transportation could be looked at in the region without roads as being part of the equation makes me wonder why and how are we entertaining a service authority that will have the ability to tax taxpayers directly to pay for whatever it is that they perceive themselves doing. I don't understand it, to be quite honest. And it concerns me when there's no real demonstrated plan. We all want a solution to transportation. We all know that there are many issues out there that go beyond just the roads. They are trails. They are a network of things. But I'm just not sure that the entity that's leading the charge for this is the appropriate place to land all the eggs in the basket, if you will. Further to our position, if you'll indulge me, there is our folks next door in the neighboring community in Langford also have pondered this, and at their last meeting, in spite of CRD staff saying that they'd met with council and got a good feeling about that there was support, the following recommendation came from Langford: that the City of Langford, in order to ensure value for money, appropriate scope of work, no duplication between the various levels of government, and no shifting of the capital costs of transportation infrastructure onto the Capital Regional District, requests that the Capital Regional District provide all municipalities and electoral areas within the Regional District with detailed information on the funding amount required by the Regional Transportation Service Establishment Bylaw over the next 5 years and what it will be used for. And that the City of Langford does not support a Capital Regional District transportation service that does not allow each municipality and electoral area within the Regional District time to review the detailed information on the required funding amounts and the objectives, and to opt out of the Regional Transportation Service if it so wishes. And that in this instance, the City of Langford does not support an alternative approval process to obtain approval from municipal electors for the Regional Transportation Service, but believes consent should be provided in accordance with Section 346 of the Local Government Act, whereby consent is provided by each municipal council consenting on behalf of municipal electors, and by alternative approval process in each electoral area. And that the City of Langford reaffirms its support for a no-cost advisory committee made of local government representatives to provide recommendations and priorities to BC Transit and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. That's what they passed and carried at their council meeting. Ours is putting forward the letter to the CRD. They will, it's a two-part, if they don't get their 100% consent in this around to the municipalities, they will and have said they're going to go to an alternate approval process. Look it up, folks. It's a quick way into your pocket without anybody's consent. So it concerns me greatly, and those of us who object are a minority at the table, but we can only do what we have options in front of us. So with that, I'll turn it to council for any questions or any clarifications or whatever you may have. Councillor Day.
Thanks. I just thought I'd point out a couple more facts. The requisitioning for capital projects and pursuing a role in transit, this is a quote from their letter of January 12th. Changes in grant funding allocations and provincial approaches subsequently rendered those roles less feasible. In other words, right from the start, they know that they don't have what they need to do that. So the services that can be included and that they are talking about delivering are data collection, programming, and lobbying for funding of regional priorities. So I found that's the first time I've actually seen what it is they're going to do with the money that they're trying to requisition. And then further, from their board report, the cost to set up this service, even to do the alternate approval process, is likely to cost in excess of $200,000. So right off the bat, we're $200,000 in the hole towards making anything any better for transportation. The costs, they say, would initially be charged to the board budget, and if the service is established, the new service would be required to reimburse these costs. So I think it's very important that Colwood make a statement that we do not want to be a part of this service. And my question would be, either through the mayor or to staff who might be able to answer it, what would we need to do to ensure that we are not forced into that in the alternate approval process? How many signatures do we have to get of people saying no? 10% of our population or 10% of the whole CRD?
Region.
Of the CRD.
Right.
That's what makes it almost impossible.
So start telling all your family and friends, because I don't think it's doing anything for anybody else either. We all recognize that transportation is a major issue. We have limited road networks that are full to capacity, and we'd like to see more transit-oriented options. But we've been very limited either by roadways or by service hours to work on those roadways to make the important changes. And I've received a number of emails from people lobbying about transportation. Transportation's been certainly high on my radar in all 5 elections that I've run in. And but this isn't a solution. This is just a waste of money that makes it so we have less ability to make a change.
Councillor Knoll?
I agree that this is a useless duplication of efforts that are already in place, of reports that have already been done. And what really troubles me is the idea that the CRD could even go to an alternate approval process. We have an unelected body of government, and they have the ability to impose taxes without representation. There have been revolutions over taxation without representation. Maybe we can have a Victoria Tea Party. But it really bothers me that an unelected government can do that. And I wholly agree with what council has, or staff has proposed in the letter, and we'll be supporting that wholeheartedly. And I think the more noise we make about this alternate approval process, hopefully these guys have some sense of shame.
Anybody else? Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Worship. I will say that their initial presentation that we had a number of months ago was vague on deliverables, and aside from some bullet points that Councillor Day had pointed out, for $2.5 million, we expect a specific work plan, some specific goals, a specific blueprint, and I haven't seen that yet. And our experience has been that when you opt into in-service, that's it, and essentially that's providing a blank check to the CRD, and I think that's probably what has got us most apprehensive, is that blank check aspect. And really the CRD has no more influence over transit, over the province, than we do. And it's been said before that we know where the bottlenecks are. We just need to action the solution, and really the solution is the province, and the province is aware of what needs to happen as well. I think with this counter-petition process, what's frustrating is the West Shore is the fastest growing part of the region, yet we seem to be less than relevant when our voices are excised at the CRD board level. So for me, that's frustrating, because I would think that the West Shore, especially on transportation issues and other issues, would have more influence and perhaps garner a little more respect at the CRD board table than we do. And, I think this is classic of some of the reasons why the West Shore is frustrated with the CRD, is because a lot of the decisions are driven by only a couple of the municipalities. So I think I will be supporting the letter that we're going to send, and again, I think residents ought to be deeply concerned if we go through the alternative approval process. It's really a slap in the face to democracy as far as I'm concerned. So that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you. I agree with everybody. I'm not going to reiterate everything that everybody else has said. I actually concur with everything that's been said. The one thing that does stand out in my mind, though, as well, and I do not understand why the general public and the general taxpayers are not more up in arms, is this concept that this $2.5 million is cost neutral, and because nothing's cost neutral. That would suggest to me that CRD has $2.5 million that they have the ability to reallocate, which means that they were overtaxing us $2.5 million because now they have the ability to reallocate it. And it brings up the question, and I don't know why everybody isn't up in arms with that, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It would make sense to me if they were looking for new funding, but when you say that you can reallocate it, I would suggest that we need to do a service review with CRD to see how efficient they truly are with taxpayers' money, because it certainly doesn't feel that way.
And if you recall, when they were here previous, that ask on the money end of things was $10 million. And they scaled it back, having heard, but the scale back was simply to use the allocated, to reuse funds that they had and reallocate them to another service. So again, it's a frustration. Recommendation, folks, we need to have council endorse the letter being sent, and there is a list of recipients that are CC'd in that include the various municipalities in the capital region, the electoral area that's affected, our higher government representatives who sit in and are part of this, Minister of Transportation, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and our Premier and our local MLA.
So moved that we endorse the draft as presented and all the agencies that are listed to be sent to.
Any further discussion, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Hey, I like it when we get claps. We need that more often. Thanks, Chris.
Moving forward then into Transportation and Public Infrastructure report from Manager of Development Subdivision Services. Nikki, you're taking that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. I'm here on behalf of our Land Development Manager, who unfortunately could not be in attendance tonight. Please bear with me, as I'm not nearly as eloquent on this process as he undoubtedly would have been. On November 27th of last year, Council gave consideration to close the road dedication of the portion of Ocean Boulevard where the Park and Ride is currently located, and directed staff to prepare a road closure bylaw. Bylaw 1717 and the accompanying staff report are now before you for consideration for first, second, and third readings. If endorsed, staff will then post notice in the local paper, obtain comments from outside agencies and interested parties, and receive input from the public with regard to the closure. To be clear, this report is not to decide the fate of the Park and Ride or disposal of the land. It is simply to ensure that the city appropriately manages its assets, and this road closure, if endorsed, will allow the city to manage this 0.73 hectare area as land, as opposed to a road dedication. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to staff?
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Second.
And a question now. Councillor Day?
Thank you. There was a question at public participation just about the right-of-way and whether we would protect the ongoing use of the fast charger that was installed there.
Through Your Worship, all utility operators will be notified of proposed closure after the initial reading of the bylaws passed, and the city and its engaged solicitor will work on any statutory rights-of-way agreements or other agreements required to protect or otherwise ensure the relocation of any infrastructure located currently on the property.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Bylaws before us this evening. Bylaw number 1717 for first, second, and third readings. This is the road closure and dedication removal bylaw for a portion of Ocean Boulevard, the previous topic.
Move introduction.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Day?
I just want to reiterate that I just still have concerns as there is no identified alternate location for Park and Ride should this become something different in the future. And so I feel that its dedication as roadway protected it, and that is why I'm not supporting this bylaw going forward.
Thank you. Any others? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Bylaw number 1713 for final reading. It is Colwood Main Sewer Local Area Service Bylaw and Establishment Loan Authorization number 598, 2001.
Move final, Your Worship.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next bylaw number 1714, final reading for Colwood West Sewer Local Area Service Establishment and Loan Authorization bylaw number 625, 2001.
Move final.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Release of our in-camera resolutions have been done.
Move adjournment.
Sorry.
Sorry, I would move that we release the appointment or of the confirmation of the appointment of Citizen Al Hood to the West Shore Parks and Recreation.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move adjournment.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion